Reaching out to us today is author Eirik Sinclair. He's a researcher of empirical and esoteric data, specifically knowledge and evidence from known writings and texts, which the academic sector chooses to neglect. With the use of Templar Science that has been forsaken by most, he retrieves facts that have been intentionally woven into historical accounts to establish the Voyage of the Thundergods. As those Viking sagas are unveiled, the ancient mystery belonging to the Civilization of Atlantis is finally revealed at last. 3 concentric rings connected by land and sea. Having laid the groundwork for the Greek and Roman rings of antiquity, the Norse culture rises with the development of the 3rd concentric ring of world expansion. The religion of Thor reigned over America for nearly 2,000 years, coming to life within the branches of the Mississippi River. From the actual discovery of America to the original inhabitants of the pre-Columbian era, Eirik Sinclair shows a passion for the truth. Here we talk to Eirik Sinclair about his books, specifically The Voyage of the Thundergods, The Civilization of Atlantis Revealed. I got your emails and stuff, and I kind of wanted to see how you wanted to go about everything. I figured I would do. I don't know if you've seen any of my stuff before, but
I've been watching it for a couple weeks now.
Oh, okay, rad, cool. So you kind of know.
I got introduced to you with the Scout Walter.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, Scott's awesome, man. He's on it. He's doing a lot of research, but it feels to me like you guys kind of have a lot of the same vein in as far as a lot of the research that you guys are both doing, you know?
I basically got started because of Scott Walter.
Oh, that's rad. That's very cool.
Yeah, I've just been following him ever since. He basically introduces me to everything that he's been introduced to, and I just keep going with it.
Dude, that's rad. Yeah, so how long have you been doing this?
Let's see, it was probably somewhere in the early 2000s. I think it was 2003 when Scott did the Holy Grail in America.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I got my start. I basically started following some Templar things I saw in the show, and then they just kept leading to another thing, and I just kept going with it.
Dude, that's rad. So you just do all your own research and just dig into things and then find all these connections, right?
Yeah, I've been contacting Scott. He's given me a few things. I talked to him just like last week, and so he's on to something new. I can't wait for it to come out.
I know. We've been talking kind of off the record as well, and some of the stuff he's working on is just amazing, and I can't wait for that to drop. It's going to be really cool once that happens. I mean, rewriting history books probably in the process of all that stuff. But I mean, a lot of stuff that you found is awesome too. I mean, like the map you made is epic. By the way, I'm going to pop it up if I can.
I got it. I got it right here for you.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, if you can do share screen, that'd be awesome. Then I would love to see that and check that out and kind of walk through that. I mean, this had to take some time, right?
It was a lot of fun though.
I mean, this is amazing. I mean, this is years of research, right? I mean,
oh sure. It took me about a year, maybe 2, just to get to this. This map was really preliminary.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gone way past what's on this map. This map is really old.
Wow. But to me, I think it's a very awesome visual representation of historic events and geographically putting it all together, right? I mean, I think it's awesome how you created this. And
thank you. That's basically what my idea was to get this out there to people. And most people, the research itself has been done by a lot of people.
Right.
A lot of people know this, but they don't seem to want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean that's another thing Scott was saying too. When everything doesn't fit the mold or the paradigm for academics, they seem to shy away from it, or the worse is just shut you down, right, and say that you're full of it. And
I've had a lot of people listening to me, and they just my lips go 60 miles an hour, so they kind of like go wow, and then they can't take much in.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, so what was the impetus? Like, when you wanted to do this? Well, how did you go? What was the start? What was your rough draft? Like, how did you go? Okay, how am I going to outline this and then make this real? Like, what was the defining, event on this map that made you go, let's start here and then make this happen?
Well, I guess it would really come down to finding out that America was discovered so long ago. I mean, I followed the Templar. And the Templar basically give you everything. And all of a sudden you have people following you. I literally, when I started writing, I went to a grocery store and there were ladies coming up to me saying, we don't want to know. And I'm like,
what?
I didn't tell you anything. How would you know you don't want to know? So it was very interesting. I had people just coming up to me out of the blue. I've never talked to them before. and people just started talking to me about what I was doing. And some people are afraid. There's a lot of religious dogma out there, so a lot of people were back there in that one. But I got close to a lot of bloodlines, and once you follow the bloodlines, this whole map comes together so easily.
Okay. So that was the impetus kind of a little bit to kind of get into the realm of, how this all works and where that comes from. And I really do like how, in our emails back and forth, you were saying that, that this is directly from you, quote from you, that people need to understand each and every society on the planet is a combination of at least two cultures, and at which point they're created, they split into two cultures again. Like you said, it was a great analogy, was like a single cell divides under a microscope. So you have these two separate cultures, and then they merge, right? And then they kind of take the best or the worst of both those cultures and then merge again and again and again. And that's pretty much bloodline related as well, right? Because you can map that genetically now, with all the things that we have, correct?
Absolutely. This day and age, this map probably couldn't have been created 20 years, maybe 30, 40 years ago. Right now, it's so simple. Anyone can do it.
Right.
We're literally talking about, just think of the Democrats and the Republicans being red and blue. You mix them together, they're purple. Mm-hmm. Now, once all the purple people get together, they get mad at each other, they split apart, and they try getting as close to red and blue as they can again, but they can't. Right. So then they start adding new blood from new sources, trying to get back to where they were. And it just doesn't work out, and they just keep doing it, moving on, and the world is now what it is.
Very purple. Everywhere, right?
People are everywhere, and it took a long time. So I kind of, one of my taglines is there was no Big Bang. This took a long time.
Yeah. And so like the rings here, can you kind of walk me? I would love to have you walk me through the map, but like the rings are what draw my attention right away. Yeah, right in the dead center there. What do we got going on?
All right. Well, essentially what you got going on is this first ring is the original Greek ring. Right. I refer to it as Hellas because the Greek ring was created by the philosophers who were basically imprisoned or moved to Egypt. So basically it was an afterthought. This product of Hellas and the Anatolia, this created every person on the planet. There was maybe 20,000 people in this area.
Wow.
And they expanded the entire planet from this one location. And when it fell, that's basically the first fall of Atlantis. Okay. You have all the philosophers and intelligent scholars or whatever you have moving to Egypt for safety or being held there as prisoners. And you could choose either one. Okay. And basically they wrote this whole first circle after the fact because there was really not a lot of writing going on, and what writing they did have probably didn't survive. Okay. So they basically went back and tried recreating what happened here. Mm-hmm. And then they basically created the exact same circle out here on the second ring, which is the Roman ring. Gotcha. And that's basically where you hear of Plato's Atlantis dialogues. Okay. He basically was calling on his three friends, one that represented the Greek circle, one that represented the Italian circle, and then a third one that was going with the Nordic circle that was being created at the time. Okay. So we basically had a discussion with three of his friends and said, hey, every year, why don't you talk to the people in your jurisdiction and say, here, this is what happened back in Greece. Don't forget them. Right. And essentially by having people talking about Greece, that actually started the Hellenistic society where Alexander the Great came back. This is basically people having, being patriots for Greece and trying to recreate Greece as it was. So if it wasn't for Plato, more than likely Alexander the Great probably never would have existed. So it was a revival of, it was more of like a revival of their history at that point because they started creating the history or documenting the history. It was more like, getting everybody amped up to get back, more like nationalism. I want to say nationalism in a sense, right? Exactly. Right. Gotcha. We're on the nose. Gotcha. So it was just kind of increased the thing. So the actual three rings of Atlantis, or the Atlantis is the sunken continent, is that in your research non-existent? Like you don't think that was a thing that actually existed out in the Atlantic Ocean and sank and that it's more like from your philosophy here that it was current, what we're looking at right now? It is basically what you're looking at right now, but within the Greek circle alone, there were 3 rings.
Okay, got
And
it.
basically, philosophers, they're just like the Templar, or they are the Templar.
Mhm.
They look for things that repeat themselves. And
Okay.
once they see these echoes, that's why my book's called Echoes of Atlantis.
Mhm.
They basically recognize these circles, and they say the circles happened before us. They're going to happen again, and then they just write them down so that they can actually predict the future, like Nostradamus.
Got it.
Yeah. So basically, he just wrote down what they believed happened in Greece, what was happening in Rome, and then they actually sent out the 3rd ring to get Greece back in line, because Greece was basically crushed. That is the fall of Atlantis, and they basically tried recreating it in America.
Ah, okay. So it was like, okay, we need to make this happen. Send the ships west, right?
Yep, that's the religion of Thor. Basically, all they did was breed people back to the Greek way of life. So it's basically Alexander the Great just being replicated as many times as they could.
Wow. To bring the state back to its original standing, right? Something like that?
Yes, and actually, I just learned, probably, I think it was like 6 months ago, that they actually did go full circle. You know, I when I was watching the Holy Grail show, everyone wanted to get back to the Holy Land.
Right.
And I really never really understood what the fascination was with the desert and why they wanted to get back there. But basically, if you follow the Byzantine Empire, which is the Eastern Roman Empire, they went full circle. The Byzantine Empire went to the Americas, circled around Rome, and they became the Eastern Empire. And they actually got back to the Holy Land, which is Greece. It's not Israel, as most people assume it is.
Wow.
So he actually did make it back. There's a bloodline you can follow by name all the way around these circles. And it came right back to the Byzantine Empire. And they existed up until, they were overthrown by the next Templar lair.
Wow. So
yeah,
the infighting.
They were sacked by the Western Roman Empire.
Imagine that.
But I still think it exists because obviously Henry VIII, he's basically the overgrown Templar of old.
Okay.
So when you follow his bloodline, he was originally Samson of Israel. He became Hercules of Greece. He moved on as Tiberius, jumped into the Bartholomews, became Henry Bartholomew, jumped into Henry, and he just followed that line all the way around. And then he came back to Greece as another name with Hercules in it. It's like Herculitis or something, Herculaneum or something.
So are we talking about like an actual one human, like one man at one point, or are we talking about just the bloodline of his family or his descendants going through all that?
Well, that's the catch-all here. It's basically his bloodline, but it's his bloodline. He was considered the lowly son of Greece, which means he was number 9 out of 9 jurisdictions of Greece. And he was the closest one to Egypt. And since he was the one that was lowest on the totem pole, he basically collected all the people that were not part of Greece, and he moved as a movement. And that was basically the Persian Empire.
Got it.
And he moved on Greece to replace them just, for whatever they evolved into. He didn't agree with it. He became the religious one. And it's basically the start of, kings who, basically rule over a whole flock of people. And then he just took that whole system and reinvented it. And then he just followed everybody as they ran away.
Huh.
That's kind of like the fleur de lis,
right,
of the French. So he followed everybody, and he just reinvented himself each and every time as close as possible to what he was. So that's why, you probably hear a lot about the Templar, having a sacred feminine line. Well, he can't reinvent himself unless he preserves the female line as well.
Correct.
So he basically, the Holy Grail is the one who finds it. So once he finds the Holy Grail, he gets to reinvent himself and become the son that overthrows the father. And then once he does that, the old is replaced by the new.
Wow. And it's just a circle.
Yep, that's a time loop that I basically follow with everything I do. And it just shows itself in history over and over and over again.
Wow.
So anyone can follow it.
And it's all backed by genetic evidence, right?
Yes. It's very simple. Most people, you listen to a scholar, and the scholars just go with whatever's on paper. If it wasn't written on paper, they don't believe it. Doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Right.
It just means they don't have it to read it from. So you just follow, if you follow how races combine together and the new nation that's formed, they'll do the same thing. That nation will split into two. It'll reform somewhere else. And then you just follow it around the globe and you can see the people forming. And, it just basically tells you all these dotted lines you see. These are the shipping lanes. And you can just follow the bloodlines as they go through these shipping lanes.
Wow. So then when they get to a new area, like obviously if you're coming out of this part and you get up into, the Irish and the Scottish and things like that. And, obviously there were people there at the time. You're mixing into bloodlines there that are adding to the genetic pool as well.
Absolutely.
And then,
but you got to imagine in this first circle, you're going to have very few nomads out and about in this Baltic area. Once you get to the Roman line, then the Baltics were then filled. And that's why Henry, he would actually come into conflict with basically that Germanic line. So, they meshed together, then they had wars with each other, then they meshed together, and it would just go back and forth.
And that's when it was actually probably populated. Well, at the time, they were probably nomadic then, right? The whole Germanic line was when they were nomads and kind of wandering. Yeah,
pretty much. Once Greece fell, the Germans basically had to retreat. And then, that's how Germany and France and, even Russia, that's how they formed, people running away from, the destruction of Greece.
Right. And just starting anew. And then, like you said, once again, joining at some point with their, other half of themselves. And this, like, you mentioned the sacred feminine and the divine feminine, like she always takes, is a big play in that, into all this, but it's hidden. And how did you uncover that in your research?
Well, a lot of that actually comes from people like you, Scott Walter, any show that I can watch. I definitely have one of the lines in my family. My grandmother, she's basically a Peruvian Indian. And that was one of the lines that led the Nordic, retreat up the Mississippi. And she basically put me on this path. She basically her line only mixed with kings.
Wow.
So basically, she gave me a lot of knowledge. And the way I like to point it out is that the Greeks, just imagine Hulk Hogan being the king of Greece.
Okay.
Now, when the people of Egypt, when all the scholars went down to Egypt, well, all that thought process and all the new technologies were kept from Greece.
Okay.
Now, when you mix the philosophers with Hulk Hogan, you're going to get, Henry VIII.
Aha. Makes
He's
sense.
The middleman. He's the middleman that basically preserves the mind and the body, which you might hear a lot in the religious sectors. Because basically Greece was the body and Egypt became the mind. And every time those two mix together, you basically get, Jewish lines. And that's where Henry VIII comes in. He's basically a Jewish line, but he is mixing in with the Christians. He's the middleman.
Wow. So that gets me to, one of my theories that, I prescribe to, I would say, and it's not necessarily my theory, but it's the whole, cargo cult theory, that you want to say. I don't know if you're familiar with that, basically, is, the people at the time saw something in the sky, didn't know what it is, so they emulated it and worshipped it because they wanted it to come back. And that was the basic formation of, most religions on the planet. And I'm pretty sure you're probably familiar with the cargo cult mentality, right? That theory.
Well, I'm learning it from you.
Oh, okay. So yeah. I'm not sure who coined it, but I know that in recent history, Peter Levenda, the author, along with Tom DeLonge, actually, in his book, Gods, he's got a series of books, Gods, Man, and War hasn't been released yet. Gods and Man has been released, but Gods, it's a cargo cult. Is the term is coined from World War II when the U.S. was island hopping in the Pacific on the way to Japan. There were some islands that we landed on that were inhabited, but they had never seen anybody from the outside world. So they would land the planes there, clear the forest for a runway, set up a tower, to watch planes come in and out. And these people never saw a white person before, never, never had any contact with outside worlds. And suddenly they're seeing these battles in the sky. These planes are fighting each other. These ships, these bombs are going off, and these people are there. And some of them interacted with them, some of them didn't. They gave them medicine and food and, clothing, things that they could never even possibly imagine. And then after the war, they just took off. So what they found was that these people that these native people from these islands started to create the things that they had witnessed and kind of worship the sky gods. Basically, what they did is they started clearing out their own forest and making runway. They started.
Wow.
They built actual planes, models of planes out of sticks with propellers and everything, and will go out every night and sit and watch and kind of like pray and like hope they come back, because they like brought, obviously from all the stuff they got them, they, they even have like makeshift cargo boxes and stuff that, the things that they gave them and things like that. And, that's basically where the term cargo comes from. So that, the theorization behind all of that is the Lavinda basically is saying, and was that you could use that as a basis for all religion on the planet, if you think of it in terms of, if you think of a UFO, right, or something from advanced civilization anywhere, from from outside of Earth, it could even be on Earth, right? These things happen. You see these battles in the sky. You see these things. These people land. All these kind of miracles happen. These things that you've never seen before, and then these people disappear. Well, if you look back to all the basis of religion, that's kind of what Christianity is. Pretty much all the Abrahamic religions, at least. And then if you look to India and any of those, same as well, Vimanas. All those things like that. So it's interesting to see how that would play out in this type of situation. It'd be kind of cool to see, timelines attached to that as well, to see how that all played out. Because like you said, maybe this was planned in a way.
I think it happened by accident, just like you said. Mm-hmm. Actually, people said, how can we use this to our advantage?
There you go. Right. How do we make this work?
That's basically religion of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So...
Right. And interesting. This is an amazing map. I'm really excited about all the data and all the times and everything you got here. And the voyage, obviously, all the way across the sea, which, everybody's still upset about, was Columbus. But what timeline do you have that occurring at in this whole, in all your research? What time, what do you think was the original Europeans, quote unquote, arrival in North America?
Well, basically what I was looking into is I was reading all the transcripts from Egypt itself. Mm-hmm. And everybody, it started becoming the intellectual property, shortly after 1500 BC. There was the Greek intellectual properties that had, basically a foothold on civilization. Mm-hmm. And Egypt was basically Tartarus. It was a prison. They called it an oubliette, a prison with walls of air. Hmm. And basically everybody that wasn't anybody would be sent down to Egypt, and they all just mixed together, just into one big pool of people to be used for whatever purpose that you'll see Osiris and all the people that the Templars study. Mm-hmm. They're all down in Egypt trying to create technologies, and they were using these people to do it. And then in those writings, I came across stuff where they basically wanted to circumvent the globe, and they were sending ships out. And that basically what you have here is some ships made it, some ships didn't make it. There was all kinds of, talk of sea monsters at that time, because ships were getting destroyed and people were going out into the water and finding destroyed ships. Mm. But basically, I've pretty much narrowed it down to Mjolnir Eriksson having made the whole trip, but he didn't want to come back the same way he left because it was such a long voyage. And he basically followed the coastline. And as soon as he got to the Arctic Circle where there was ice, he knew where he was, because they had already done the voyages to Norway. They always follow the coastlines because it's safe.
Oh, hey, zoom out or a little bit so we can get the whole. Yeah, there we go. Sure, okay. Oh, yeah, there we go.
The original lines just followed the coast. Mm-hmm. To be safe. They knew what was up here. They knew there was ice. Mm-hmm. And then once he was trying to follow his way home, he came across the ice again. He says, I know where we are. And he got back to Europe that way. And now he told everybody. And back then they don't have phones.
Right.
It took quite a while. That's why I put circa 1300, 1200 BC on my map, because they really don't know when he made it, because it took him a long journey just to get back. And then once he informed everybody of what he had found, that's when Carthage started moving the entire civilization of North Africa up into the Baltic Sea. I mean, they moved everybody because they knew it was a safer trip. They knew it was only 3 hours from Greenland.
Wow.
So they moved everybody up north, and at that point in time, then Rome got involved, because obviously they were still somewhat connected. If you see Sicily here, that's Samson, and Italy and Carthage are the Pillars of Hercules. Most people use the Celtic, or the Spain here and Morocco as the Pillars of Hercules. But really, the Pillars of Hercules is right here because they wanted to stop all boat traffic from leaving the Mediterranean. They wanted a complete monopoly on all boat traffic.
Wow.
So basically what you have here is Sicily is where all the Egyptian philosophers, they all moved to Sicily. That was their stronghold. And it wasn't until Italy sacked Sicily that the Third Ring basically started collapsing. But, Italy did not have the power to get across America, across the sea at the time to get to America. So the Nordic people continued to live on. They continued to send people back as Scandinavians, trying to build up enough population to be, go up against, what is Rome at the time, because they were the most powerful entity at that time. So basically they were building the Nordic area just as an opposing force.
Wow.
And obviously Italy did sack them again later on, and they became part of the Catholics. You probably may have heard of the Lutheran religion. That's basically the end of the third Atlantis ring. That's the Nordic civilization. They were just took under the wing of the Catholic Church and said, hey, you're done now, but you're part of us.
Wow. So when they finally got up there and the Nordics came across and hit North America, obviously they met indigenous people like Native Americans, right, at the time, and were breeding with them, right? I mean, I would say there wasn't any indigenous people here at all. Wow.
America, you probably had some scant amount of people who had made it across the ocean over the previous 1,000 years. But most of them died off. I mean, there's all kinds of reports of skeletons being found in America, but no civilization. Because people who made it across, either they didn't bring any women with them, they lived out their lives and then died. And if they did bring women, you're talking about, it would take centuries to build up a population of Indians to match what we know had existed. They were basically brought over. You can see down here in the lower end of the map, you have the Lucian Alliance. And this is basically, Nordic plus Persia. You combine those two cultures together. They said we both lost to Rome. We now combine together. We're bringing people right over here. Cape Verde was the launching point. If you look at these islands, you'll probably see the image of a Klingon warship from Star Trek. And that essentially is where it came from, because they basically were sending people over here across the ocean. It's called the Isle of the Blessed, or the Tiber River. And people crossed the ocean right here. They came to Mesoamerica, and that's where the Templar and the Vikings met them and basically created the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is basically the Mississippi River and all the branches that come out. They basically created a tree, and as you move up the tree, you were closer to being Nordic, as a finished product, back to Greece.
Wow.
So basically they created everybody. People don't really understand that there was nobody here. If you believe in the Bering Strait, mythology, you really have to treat it like a mythology, because, they say everything else is myth, but could you understand what it would take for someone to travel from Egypt all the way through the east, up Russia, across a frozen plain of ice, and then skip over America for some reason, and then start settling in Mesoamerica.
Yeah,
I mean,
doesn't seem right, does it? That
no,
land bridge, right? That land bridge really made it happen, right?
yeah, it's kind of silly, and that's what I look for when I do my research. I look for things that are silly or just ridiculous, and yet the scholars believe in it. And that's the stuff I pick up on, and I go, okay, they're hiding something. There's something here. So, but the Bering Sea is basically it's to throw you off the track,
right? To get you to say, okay, well, just not give it a second thought, and just discard it, right? Yeah, I gotcha. The so the Snake Mound in southern Ohio, the Serpent Mound is a huge thing. So that was created by the Templars and the at what time? I mean, that's what I'm trying to think. So as the mound builders and everything that we're all familiar with in the Americas and things like that, was it if that wasn't here, was it the people that came out of Egypt and out of Greece and were they here doing that? Is that who the
well, the majority of like your pyramid type locations, that's basically just to keep people busy.
The Chichen Itzas and all those things in Mexico, current day Mexico, and that's all related to that.
Teotihuacan, they're basically winter campsites, because people, they tend to the crops in the farmlands, but during the winter they can't survive. So they all come down the Mississippi River and they camp out at the pyramids for the winter time. And that's why it's a very good clue to your Leif Erikson mythology, because these are fallen leaves. Indians, basically, they mix with Leif Erikson. Everyone who does mix with them goes farther up the Mississippi River. Everyone who doesn't goes back to Mexico as a fallen leaf. And that's why Leif Erikson is named Leif Erikson. If the person even existed, I don't even know. But the mythology was built around just calling people leaves on the tree of life.
Wow, interesting.
So, and there was many Leif Eriksons. You can see up here, up in Greenland. I've listed a number of them that I found in records. But there's probably, from 1 BC to 985 AD, there's a big gap there. So I'm sure there's plenty other time loops that existed in there that I just don't have any records for. Wow.
So it's interesting to pull that off as far as the current model of the hunter-gatherer Native American, pre-Native American North American indigenous people would be. I've never thought of the fact that they treated Mexico like people treat Florida now as snowbirds. Right?
Right on the nose. That's exactly what it is. That's probably the creation of the snowbirds.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, it's cold here. Screw this. Let's go south and hang out for a while, right? And then
what you got here is you probably got Tenochtitlan being all the higher ups where they get served, and Teotihuacan is probably where all the Indians took refuge. So I kind of look at it, I call Tenochtitlan, Loki, the Thor and Loki. Teotihuacan I named Thor, because these are the people that go up the Mississippi River and eventually get to the end. And once you get to the end, you have this trek up to Vinland Station where they would bring you back to Europe. And then if you went up to Europe, you'd be Swedish. And then the Templar would pick you up. And then they take you back to Sweden. So everybody, that's where the runestones came from. They would place runestones across this large lake or the inlet here. And then the Templar would just go along the coast, and whenever they saw a stone, they would stop and pick up that Indian tribe, which would be Swedish. And they'd bring them back home.
So they would actually be Swedish, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Swedish people?
Yeah, I forgot I was gonna pick up a picture of Olaf Ullman. You know who that is, right?
Yeah, that was the Kensington Runestone guy, right?
Yeah, just take a picture of, you take a look at his picture. He's basically half Indian, half Viking. He's a classic mix of the two. I would guess that Olaf Ullman was chosen to find the Kensington Runestone because he was probably the last indigenous American alive or known.
Holy crap.
So I would say his line probably came to an end in 1900, and that's basically why they gave him the Kensington Runestone to basically reveal the bloodline that finally came to an end.
Holy crap.
So I really admired the guy. I think it was really exciting what he did. I'm really hoping that Scott Walter can blow the whole world open with a revelation about that stone, because it's my belief that the stone is a Rosetta Stone, and that it's actually text that was copied off the Leif Erikson runestone. Basically, Leif Erikson, he was attacked by the Indians, and he came over through the Hudson Bay and came back down to Minnesota to take everybody off the Tree of Life, because he knew that they were being attacked and he wanted to save as many people as he could. So he came to Alexandria, Minnesota, and he basically just sent people down the Tree of Life, the Mississippi River, and he just pulled them all up and said, hey, we got to get out of here. We're under siege. And basically at that point, I believe Oak Island might be the resting place of the Leif Erikson runestone. When they found a depression on the top of the hill where they believed the treasure pit was, I'm assuming that's where the stone once stood, and someone has taken it. And hopefully it's in Sweden, and I'm putting up a pretty good bet that the Kensington runestone is going to decipher the Leif Erikson runestone.
Wow. So these were just basically waypoints, way markers. The runestones were guideposts or bus stops.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you have the bus stops. If you look at these islands I put on the East Coast here, this is the Roanoke Island right down by Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
That's where the legacy came from. That's basically a bus stop for the Vikings going down to Tenochtitlan. You know, they basically had a 3-hour journey, 6-hour journey, whatever it was they had for them. And you'll see a bus stop. Once they got across, you know, from Greenland and hit Finland, there's obviously, I think it's Ox Meadows, I believe they call it. That's the first bus stop. That's for everyone to get nourished. You know, you just took a long place to sleep after the long voyage. You get there, you go another 6 down to the Long Island, New York. You run down to Roanoke. You get down to the Bimini Island, and then you're to Tenochtitlan. So they basically had these little way stations that they followed the East Coast to get where they were going.
So they would just stop, and those are probably provisioned, and people are probably hanging out there all the time then, right? There was probably little communities.
That's exactly what it was for. And, basically when they find these islands that had provisions and then they're emptied out, they created their own legacy from that.
Wow.
You know, like Long Island, New York, that was the main Viking civilization in America. And that's where almost all the Vikings kept their colonies. And then in 1066, they basically got wiped out and Long Island was emptied. And so Roanoke is more than likely is Long Island, New York, the original one. And you can spell it out. It's called Row and Oak, an oak ship. You gotta roll it. So,
yeah, it does make sense. A lot of it's right on the nose, isn't it? Like most of this is just kind of like, you just overlook it and you're like, whatever. But yeah, no, that does make huge sense. So I've seen something that's catching my eye, the Bermuda Triangle. What the hell's going on? What's your theory about that piece of madness down there?
That is Henry Bartholomew.
Okay, Henry Bartholomew. Can you break that down for me?
He's the original. He was Samson in Israel. He became Samson as he moved away from Israel. He became Hercules in Greece. He's basically the guy that, like I told you before, he was the middleman between the two. He was, bringing the two sides together.
Okay.
He brought Greece and Egypt together. He became the middleman that, basically led them both. And he basically was the king of America for almost his entire history.
Wow.
He's also known as the king of Ireland because Ireland was basically the European colony that represented America. So he was stationed there. He eventually became the king of England. And that's where you hear how the Seer, which is basically the Roman Catholic Church, how he couldn't have any sons. So they said he cut off the heads of all the women.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's basically all storyline. If our president ever cut off the head of his wife, the whole country would rebel against him.
Right.
So it never happened. What he did is he brought his genetic line, which would be, the heirs to the throne. He brought them to America, cutting off all the queens of England from being the true heirs of the throne.
Got it.
So his kids are all in America. They, obviously he was Black Bart in the West after the invasion of the Spanish, and then he basically became part of the Western civilization west of the Mississippi. And I don't really know what happened to him a lot from there. I'm suspecting that he's the one who crossed the Pacific Ocean and kind of founded the samurai warriors. I'm not sure about that. It's something I'm still trying to study and find something that'll tell me for sure. But I suspect that he was the one who did that.
Wow. So as far as like all the crazy stuff that happens currently in Bermuda, like, ships going down, planes disappearing, UFOs, all that stuff, is that based on any type of geographical ley line thing? Or, did you find anything there that...
Well, what I have here is basically, people were making it across the Atlantic Ocean. Mm-hmm. And they had a fleet of Viking ships around, if you can see my triangle there, those are 3 different islands where they basically set up. As people came across, they basically just sank anybody who made it across, either prisoner or sank you. Wow. They did not want America to be discovered and have unauthorized people making the trip.
Jeez. So it was a fortress, right? It was just basically a choke point.
Yep. And it's basically called the King's Highway. If you follow that line, that the King's Highway, he was set up on Bimini Island. And you'll hear a lot of Odin type of references to Bimini Island and Frida or Frega or whatever his wife was. And basically the let's see what they call it, the Fountain of Youth. Mm-hmm. This is basically where the Fountain of Youth ended. It started in Peru. They basically have all kinds of little wash zones there where people were baptized. I think that's one of your big things with John the Baptist. Mm-hmm. I think people were baptized in Peru. And then, they basically just moved down the coast until they were moved over to Cuba. And then at the time of Cuba, the people from Bimini Island would come over to Cuba and pick up, whatever they felt they wanted to bring back to Europe. And it was the King's Highway. So he basically had a first pick of the lot kind of thing.
Wow.
So it was one of those things that people keep hush hush because it's not to everyone's liking. But if you follow the King's Highway, it runs right back to England.
Wow.
So, but they just wanted, this is like the Byzantine capital before they joined the Roman Empire.
Got it. So that was their own fiefdom, and they kind of patrolled and made sure everybody stayed the hell out of America.
Yeah, that's why you got to love all these little myths that we hear about, like Roanoke Island, the Bermuda Triangle. They're all based on history that's not being told. So you basically have to follow backwards these time loops. You find the time loop, you work your way back through the time loop to find when everything occurred. But basically, the time loops happened over and over and over because they were basically breeding people the exact same way.
So the time loop, give me the 1,000-foot view of the time loop in a way that would make sense to people as far as.
Well, I'll bring you back to Greece because that's the easiest place to explain. Yeah. You probably heard that you pay the boatman, a coin. Mm-hmm. It's basically you're here in Greece, you're enjoying life, you're living La Vida Loca, you're getting big and heavy, and as soon as the women don't want any part of you, well, you're basically dead. You pay the boatman a coin, he takes you down to Egypt. Mm-hmm. You now have a whole pond of people to reinvent yourself. And then basically you send your kids back way up the East Coast to Israel, and you'll just get one mythology after another that explains the trek back up to Israel and back up to Turkey, to the city of Troy, essentially. Because if you follow up the city, up the Plainway there, and you don't look back, because if you look back, you stay right where you are. That's one of the mythologies. But if you make it all the way to Troy, then the Greeks come over to Troy and they get to pick who they want to return to Greece. And it's basically all love and freedom and food and do whatever you want to do.
So it's just one big circle, and the genetics change and they keep getting intermixed with.
Yep, it's just a big circle here. Everything starts in Greece, goes in a circle. It's called the Orion Circle.
Okay.
And once you get back to Greece, you're back to where you were. If you don't show discipline, you get flushed back down and back around again. So, but this circle right here basically will tell you everything about the world, and they just repeated the circle over here.
Wow.
I mean, Egypt was moved to Mesoamerica in 1100 BC. That's when you start having the Cleopatras and the royal Egypt that we know today in all the books and all the movies and things like that. That didn't exist prior to 1100 BC.
So
prior to 1100,
yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I'm just thinking the pyramids always come in. Nobody knows when the hell they were built, but I'm just trying to think of when that thing took place and you know, how it all fits in.
Pyramids basically, I mean, like I said to everything, you're basically trying to get these heavy, overweight Greeks to mix with somebody. And the only way you're going to get the sun to remain thin is to have them work every single day. And they're building pyramids just to work themselves to accept the new genes and not the old genes, because everyone has dominant genes and latent genes.
Okay.
Whatever you're doing, you accept. If you don't go to school, you're not going to retrieve the mentality of all the education they had at the time. If you did not work hard on a pyramid, you're going to lose your physical body, and then there was no purpose for you to go back to Egypt if you're not going to try to get into a new form.
So it's like boot camp.
Yes.
Building the pyramids was boot camp for your body, and your mind had to be fed.
You'll hear a lot of people calling it a fat farm. That one comes.
That's why it took so long. Once everybody got fit, they got shipped back. It was just boats and boats of fat guys that kept showing up. It makes a lot of sense now. It's like, why did it take so long? You got 300-pound Joe over here barely pushing the pebble up the road.
Yep. That's where you'll hear a lot of history too. Is Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus. He's basically the Zeus of Carthage, but he was like a Roman senator.
Okay.
And when the people of Rome started getting heavy, he picked up all the 300 men and he took them to America, and that's basically the Tiber River. It was the Isle of the Blessed back at 850 BC. But Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus is from 133 BC, and he started the religion Thor with those men. So, basically everything that was going on in America at the time was Scandinavian. You're mixing with the Indians, and basically bringing them back to the Baltic Sea when you feel they've matured enough, and then at some point in time, they didn't feel that was enough, because Tiberius was the leader of Sparta, and Sparta was basically being stamped out of existence by the academics, because they're basically the mentality of warriors, and academics really don't want any warriors. They want science and technology. They need an army to defend themselves, but they feel that technology is enough. They don't really want these mentality of warriors who feel that they're in control. And Tiberius was the leader of Sparta. He basically grabbed all the men he could from Rome, brought them to America, and they started the religion of Thor at that time. And that's why you have the Nordic people that grew into essentially the Thor figure, because they were all very, very muscular once they lost the weight. And that's basically what they were trying to create. They were trying to recreate like that Greek image again.
In North America, or up in Norway. Okay.
Basically, once you got to Minnesota or Lake Pepin in Wisconsin, you're done. Okay, you made it up. If you made it up, you're already done. So if you were Scottish, they'd send you up the St. Lawrence River to Vinland, and the Vikings would take you back to Scotland. If you were Swedish, like Olaf Holman, they would send you up to the Hudson Bay, and then the Templar would take you to Sweden. So they had a little system based on how you turned out.
Jeez. And it was all, was everybody aware at the time, or was this all run by mystery schools, secret societies, things, that, the Templars, like, the Masons, things like that, was it all a initiatory, preparation kind of thing? Because you talk to, when you look back at the Egyptians and the Egyptian mystery schools and things like that, I mean, there's evidence of that. And was that part of the whole thing as well, where they're, kind of initiated and brought into this culture club kind of thing?
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it is. You have to just apply it to today's society. Are we talking to the president? Is he telling us what's going on with the CIA and all covert operations?
No.
Back then, it would be the same thing. Some people that were just, tending to crops probably wouldn't know what's happening to them. But then obviously people down at the pyramids who were tending to the people of the crops, then yeah, they would start being more involved in what was going on.
Right. Same kind of deal. So like as when you went through all this research and when you get back to Americas, when, obviously the Kensington Runestone, is there anything else that stands out as like, holy shit, I know that Scott, most of the stuff on the East Coast, the Vikings and, there's shit littered across there that are basically just rife with, European, Scandinavian, whatever, symbology and things like that. Is there anything that you found that stood out that you're like, oh wow, if this doesn't tell you exactly what this is, then people are just blind? Yes,
but this is the part of our situation that we're in right now. There's a lot of skeptics out there who say things aren't happening, and all you get is reports of the Smithsonian accepting archaeological evidence, and then it just disappears,
like giants.
Myself, when I was writing my books over the last 20 years, each and every time I wrote a Viking book, I watched them excavate a Viking ship on the East Coast. And there was like one, I think it was in North Carolina, that was on the news. I'm looking at it going, wow, that's a Viking ship. They found a Viking ship on North Carolina. This is evidence. They buried it and said, well, we can't let it rot, and we don't have the funds to dig it up. So let's
pull
just
it out,
bury it, come back. I saw another ship they were building the subway in New York. They literally had a crane come pick a Viking ship that used to be underneath a skyscraper. They literally had it picked up. I saw it on TV and I'm like, oh my God, they found a ship buried on New York Island. And then I never heard another word from it where it went. So they're definitely covering up the history of this country for whatever reason. Whether it's the Catholic Church, I think a lot of people say that's the case. Other people just say the Nordic line, the people are overgrown. We have to just dismiss them and let them fade away. So there's a lot of reason for people to hide, evidence, and that's going on.
That's amazing. I mean, just what end? I mean, you'd think now with all the technology we have and all of the, information that we can conjure up at a whim, that like, what would be the purpose to hide the actual true, history of basically anything, but especially North America? I don't get it.
That is my basically. I love what Scott Walter is doing. He's the first person I've ever seen in my lifetime get away with providing evidence that somebody was here prior to Columbus. And I just think it's amazing that he's been able to do it, and he's got a large following, and I just hope he can continue on.
Yeah. There's definitely some people that don't want him to. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said a couple of the people for the rationale behind that. But to me, it's like, there's so many things that you could dismiss and hide. But I mean, once you get to the point where the evidence is just insurmountable, I just think at that point, you're just going to, some of these institutions are just going to have to, go, okay. But they're going to have to spin it in a way. And I'm sure they probably have a plan for that. But I think, like you're saying, they're just buying time for as long as they can until they do that. I mean, the things that always get me are, you look at any of these traveling societies or, just the myths at all that like, well, nobody could circumnavigate the globe prior to the 1400s, right? Or, it's like, you got to be kidding me, right? There's definitely evidence of that all over the place. And when you were talking earlier about technology, I mean, there's always those, where did the technology go that some of these structures are built that we can't even replicate today? Like a lot of things like, Oh, I'm trying to think of what they are now, where the stones are so cut and so precise that, you can't even put a human hair between them and things like that. And it's like, we can't do that. Some of the ruins that they keep finding, Puma Punku, things like that. It's just like, this is amazing and we can't figure it out. And
I've done actually quite a bit of studying on those items themselves. And they literally, I mean, everything can be explained. What you see on TV is never correct. I mean, I literally was able to come up with how the Easter Island people walked down, they walked the statues. It was kind of one of their little things to get the Indians to be in awe of, magic. And they basically had oblong wheels where the people were just pulling these statues on carts. And the oblong wheels gave them a rocking motion that made them look like they were walking. And that's how they got the stones to where they were situated. They were basically marking the island like a compass to let, they were sending ships outward in every degree around the compass. And whenever they had a ship that went out in a certain direction and found nothing, they put a stone there saying, don't go that direction anymore.
Wow.
But that technology existed, but people today would look at it at these stones and say there's no way they could have moved them in that ancient time.
Mm-hmm.
The pyramids themselves, it's self-explanatory. You see the obelisks in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
People dragged those obelisks to the pyramid, and then the point was stuck in the ground. They lifted up the obelisk. They just dropped it onto the next layer of the pyramid. There was no little road that they built up the pyramid, like a lot of scholars like to say. Mm-hmm. They just basically dropped an obelisk on top, and then it was basically chewed up by the workers right on top of the pyramid. They shaved the boulders until they were flat, and then placed them together. It was quite simple. They tried to make it very difficult.
Interesting, very interesting. I think there's so many different things that. How about giants? We talked about giants for a second. I mean, did you ever run across any of that?
Quite a bit. And, the red-haired giants are basically, you're looking at the last of the Titans. America was originally colonized by the Titans of Greece, who were kicked out, and then they inhabited Egypt during the Tartarus years. And then the Titans, they became the Vanir. If you hear the mythology of the Vanir versus the Asir,
mm-hmm.
The Vanir are basically the northern part of Africa. The Asir are basically Italy and Greece and Spain. And basically the Vanir, they were basically the body. Europe was basically the mind. That's where all the technologies and schools were. Mm-hmm. And the Vanir, basically, they wanted to maintain Greece. And, they founded America. They basically created their tribes there. And then working with the Indian populations that they created, you'll have the indigenous Indians or the native Indians that we are aware of. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of looking for some native Indians to see if they still exist. I've met quite a few Indians, and most of them, maybe are 200, 500 years old. Mm-hmm. But the original would carry DNA of the original Titans. And I think that would be really exciting if, people can find out if any of them still exist to see what it is that they know.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where you get into the whole red-bearded, 8-foot tall giant mythology, right? Where they actually had some clashes with the Native Americans as well. If on the West Coast of America, there's some stories there. I can't remember the names of the tribe that Mystery Wire did a thing on. George Knapp did a thing where there was and they were cannibals. They were redheaded cannibal giants that would fight the natives, and I thought that was interesting.
I like to dismiss a lot of that. I'm not saying that it didn't occur.
Right.
Obviously, if somebody's hungry and there aren't any sources, a lot of people would probably revert to that kind of environment. But I'm hoping that it wasn't I think that they did regularly.
Right.
But essentially what you got here is you have some very large people that had lived, probably 4 to 5, a bloodline that lasted 4,000 to 5,000 years. Right. And they were giants. Now they would mix with the Indians, and then they would, as like cousins, mix together. Mm-hmm. And then this braiding system, that's why you see all the braids in the Scandinavian countries. They mm-hmm. would braid themselves together. And, and if they ever did this process too long, that's what creates red hair.
Oh.
Basically every person on this planet at one time had black hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the process of mixing with other, states, and then braiding your bloodline back together, your hair turned brown, then it turned blonde, and if you went too long, then it would turn red. So you basically have these giants who have red hair. They've probably got the oldest bloodlines in the entire world. So, but obviously people, they are afraid of big people. So they're always hunted. So, they don't have the normal civilization things that we have. They can't go to Taco Bell. If someone sees them, they're gonna hunt them down. So you have them hiding in caves and stuff like that because they can't go in normal networks.
Right. Wow, that does make sense. There's a big tell on that, especially the genetic tell. I mean, I think that's where a lot of this stuff is probably going to come out. Like you said, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever, this couldn't be done. But now with genetics, you can just make it happen and follow the whole thing.
I'm fairly positive that scientists have already created a perfect scenario of how the entire world has evolved. They're just not going to tell us. You got to pay for it. You got to go to school. You got to give them the money, the dough. And they'll let you work your whole life. You can spend 50 years studying and learn it on your own, but you just wasted your whole lifetime trying to learn what you could have learned in a week.
Wow. So what about the whole missing link thing? Any intel on that, or any theories on the missing link? If that's just a ruse.
I'm going to point out what I like to say about caveman. I don't believe caveman ever existed. People view caveman as like a link to the jungle. Like they became cavemen, then became people. Mm-hmm. I don't view that as truth at all. I think it's complete fiction. Mm-hmm. I believe that cavemen were basically, their bloodlines were in a civilization and the civilization kicked them out. And now that they're kicked out of their civilization, how do they survive? Well, they become caveman. They have to take whatever they can get. They started hiding in caves because they could no longer live in the domiciles of the time. Mm-hmm. So you basically have like the people of Russia, the Kurgan steppes. These are people all that were just kicked out of Greece, and they tried to survive on their own, and they became, the people that were hunting the woolly mammoth.
Feral, pretty much, right? They became like,
Yeah,
feral.
You can just consider them Greeks that were kicked out of society. They're not an evolutionary step. There's no missing link.
Wow.
So
interesting. I dig that. That's a really cool analogy to think about it that way. I'm really fascinated about the whole, connection to North America as well. I mean, because that just makes a lot of sense. I live on Lake Erie pretty much, and just to know that coming across that way into Lake Erie and then up and around. I mean, I'm sure that was hugely popular, and I'm assuming that's where all of the mound building and all this stuff happened too, inside of Ohio. And
Well, I like how you mentioned earlier. You mentioned there was something like a snake mound.
Yeah, serpent mound. Yeah, it's a huge mound. Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you that's probably one of the original locations of the Holy Grail.
Really?
Because basically they had these Templar junkets that would bring people to America, just so that to get the Europeans and the Indians to mix together. Okay. And basically they would mix searching, these are mythology. The Holy Grail is like a mythology that they created to get people here, to get people to search out the colonies or the Indian tribes, mm-hmm. mix with them. And basically over time, you're going to start losing men. Mm-hmm. And then basically they just let the whole junket, just disappear. And the last person left alive is basically given all the riddles and all the signs to find the Holy Grail, because there was probably at least 9 Holy Grails in our country. So whenever you see someone giving you a grail saying, we found it, well, mm-hmm. what century was that one found? Because they're probably all original Holy Grails, because really it's a bloodline you're searching for. And the trinket is something you get like a trophy. Mm-hmm. And you're the last person alive. You get to go back to Europe and tell everybody that you found it. Everybody in Europe is excited, even though every person on his party died. But that gives you people the reason to keep coming over. And it had happened for thousands of years there. So, I mean, we're looking at somewhere from like 1100 to, 1400 AD. You're looking at that's pretty much where the Templar era is, because they basically had to outweigh the Vikings, and the Vikings were wiped out in 1066. So from that point on, you have the first Magna Carta signed for America in 1101 AD. Somebody was given ownership of New England, and those people all died. So they just made a new Magna Carta and gave property to the next set of people.
Wow.
Are those people still alive, or are they not? The Confederate States, if you look at the Constitution, it was written by the Confederate States. The Confederate States are no longer. So you have to imagine the original 13 colonies, everyone has been killed already. So does America still exist, or did they sign a new contract with a new group of families, a new republic?
Interesting. And it just keeps going and going and going and going.
Exactly. That's why I like to point out the time loops. The time loops are everything. Once you learn the time loops, you know that everything's true, and you know that even though the scholars, the skeptics, kind of knock you down, you just ignore them because you know the truth is there. It's like the X-Files. I call it the dead files. Because I study dead colonies, dead civilizations. And when you find out when they die and you find out when the next one dies, you create a loop. You find the next civilization that died. And once you keep creating these loops, they all proceed in the exact same fashion. It's true because it's all there. It's in the history books. No one wants to recognize it.
So, like you said early on in the talk, then can you predict the future then?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you can predict what's going to happen, but obviously you're not going to know the names of the people. I mean, you have Nostradamus. He followed like bloodlines. When you follow Henry Bartholomew, he comes Henry VIII. He was Black Bart. His name was involved all the time with his bloodline. So you'll have a guy like Nostradamus who will predict what the next name you're going to use is. And then he knows there's going to be a margin of error. So he put all his predictions into parables. So he, say he knew of a republic of 6 families. He would put all 6 families in the parable. Only one of the 6 had to win for him to be correct.
Hedging his bets, right?
So, that's how they did it. And, so it seems amazing to people that didn't do the work to find out how they did it. It seems amazing. It's like magic. But once you do the work, it's just very simple.
Wow. It's literally just a repeating cycle and following the bloodlines. So that's amazing. 20 years of work, man. I mean, this is really rad. And I appreciate you sharing it with us. And I mean, I can't wait to dig into your books and check it out. What, where all this breaks down. Because I mean, I'm just looking at some of the notes you sent me, and you just got it straight from 1492. You got it from all the way from 1200 BC, 754 BC. And where it all ties together all the way up to present day. And I think it's just awesome. So obviously my show is called UFOs on the Level, and I know we talked a little bit about this before, but aliens, UFOs, where in all of your
an alien on this Viking sword back here. I don't know if you can see it. It's probably pretty small.
Is it really?
Yeah, I was down in Roswell. I checked it out.
That's awesome. But you told me something about a tunnel boring machine in Roswell, and what's all that about? Do you got any intel on that you want to share? That would be cool to hear. The whole.
It's all been declassified.
Okay.
The Roswell incident is known. Everyone has been exposed to the information. They're not walking out and giving you a paragraph describing it to you. They've released all the photos of what occurred. And once you see all the photos, the story just plays itself out. They have a photo of the boring machine coming out of Cheyenne Mountain, and it basically looks like a flying saucer. And then they basically, at the time, they didn't want anyone to know what they were doing there. This is a military installation. So they set up, in the desert in Roswell, which is I think it was 6 hours south of Cheyenne Mountain.
Okay.
They basically set up a situation with an old prototype of a space capsule. and they had people picking that up so that people would say, "Oh, it's a disc and it's in New Mexico."
Mhm.
It's basically to create enough chatter so that no one could really understand what was true and what was not true. So
Disinformation, just boom.
absolutely. I mean, you got all kinds of things happen. Once they pulled the disc out of the mountain, they wrapped the whole mountain up in cellophane so that nobody could see the hole in the mountain. You know, the people who picked up the disc. The people who picked up the disc, you know, it was probably an army station somewhere in between, if there is one. And everyone was taking parts out. Everyone had a different story of what they found. And, you know, the disinformation basically created the cloak that they needed to create a military installation that was safe. You know, it's guarding our country in whatever manner it is.
So basically what you're saying is in 1947, we had a tunnel boring machine that was building a giant army facility under Cheyenne Mountain. And to create disinfo static, we made it look like alien ship crashed in the desert.
You got it.
Wow. Never heard that one.
It's very simple. Yeah. I'm sure you've got some underground roads leading to Area 51. I mean, they've got all the machinery that they're testing on Area 51 has to get there somehow, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, no one saw a giant SR-71 being trucked down the highway.
Yeah, exactly. Where did that come from?
So it had to get there somewhere. So more than likely, there's some underground highways that lead to wherever they have to go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's stories riddled with that all over the U.S. that there's giant underground rail systems that connect all of these bases together. And I'm sure that's true because there's people that have been in them, driving them.
I've seen plenty of pictures. That. I mean, like when I contacted you, I just saw a slew of photos. I compared them to some of the drawings from 1947. They matched the drawings exactly.
Oh, wow.
And they were, the drawings were just embellished to make them look like some spacecraft when the photos themselves obviously were technological machines that they just didn't want the public to be aware of.
Wow. I got to definitely check those photos out. Are they just on CIA's website or FBI's?
They just came across my desk. I was just, surfing the internet, and people send me stuff and I don't even know who these people are. I'll be studying, like right now, I'm studying the Kensington runestone. I want to find out what this Rosetta Stone is going to decipher. So I've been looking for runestones from Sweden. And today I just received 14 emails of all these runestones from Sweden. I don't know who sent them to me. I just got a hold of them.
Wow.
But that happens to me quite often. I just find photo after photo. I just check them out. I go, oh, that works in this mythology, that works in this mystery. And then I just kind of like come up with my own theory on what happened. Obviously the government's not telling us. I'm just putting together a scenario that sounds logical.
Yeah.
And I'm handing it to you.
Yeah, no, that's rad. I mean, that's all anybody can do. Because now in the days of fake news and CGI and everything, anybody can make anything look like anything anymore, and do anything. And how are you going to know?
Yep, I think it was Denver. I believe I saw another photo in the original disc that they pulled out of Cheyenne Mountain. I believe it's in Denver. It's like an actual monument now.
Wow. So they actually, you think they pulled a actual UFO out of Cheyenne Mountain? No,
it's the tunnel boring machine.
The tunnel boring. Okay.
The front of it is like a circular disc.
Oh, I gotcha. It's like almost like a propeller. It's like a disc that just bores into the ground. Right.
It has little grinding circles in it, and it just spins in a circle over and over until it grinds the rock up.
Yeah.
So, but I saw a picture like 2 days after I contacted you of a monument where a boring machine was actually sitting like in a park or something. I couldn't understand the setting. And I said, they painted it white. And I said, okay, well, this has got to be that disc. They saved it for posterity. Sitting in someone's park somewhere,
Wow. Yeah, I've seen some photos too with an Air Force logo of a nuclear powered one, believe it or not. It supposedly just melts rock as it cuts through it, just does that whole same thing. So that's crazy. In 47, I mean, we've had some amazing tech in 47. Just think about the stuff they're sitting on now and not telling us,
Absolutely. I had a couple of uncles that were in that type of arena.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked them about stuff, they said, "Hey, I'm not allowed to tell you for 30 years. It's been 32 years. I'm going to my grave without telling."
Wow, they wouldn't even tell you after that, huh?
No, no, they that was their claim to fame, to know something that other people did.
Wow, I wouldn't take that to my grave.
Yeah, one of my uncles had the pleasure of being on Air Force One.
Oh, that's rad.
I think he might have been on the Kennedy plane at the time.
Wow.
He was searching for a Russian chatter at the time.
Wow. Well, there's definitely a lot of that going on right now.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of scary. Let's hope they stay where they're at now.
Yeah, definitely. They can keep it over there. I'm cool with that. But yeah, that's interesting to see their whole, makeup and what their mythology is and their stance now with the West. And, basically they're just a bunch of Greeks that got kicked out, right?
I think it's probably very close to the truth. I mean, you've got Alexander the Great. He was from Macedonia.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably got a lot of people from his bloodline up there.
Nice.
If you didn't know, there's actually 3 Alexanders. This is a really good example from my esoteric studies. If you look at the paintings of Persia, there's a Persian man that they call, I think his name is Darius II,
mm-hmm.
but in half the paintings, his name is Alexander the Great. And I'm like, okay, Darius II, Alexander the Great, they're not the same people, but yet the paintings are labeled back and forth. And I'm going, well, he probably is an Alexander. King Philip of Greece
mm-hmm.
had a Persian son, and he had a Greek son. Now, when those two bloodlines are braided together, that creates Alexander III, the Macedonian. So all his generals were already in Persia. The mythology of King Philip was that they attacked Asia, and his generals sacked Persia all the way to India.
Mm-hmm.
His generals were already there. It was part of Greece. And they just mixed the Olympic sun with the Persian sun to create that middleman who has hair. Because basically the Greeks were bald. If you're not bald, you're not Greek.
Wow. That dominant gene definitely was a tell, huh?
Yeah, big time. And basically Persians have a full head of hair. So when you mix them together, you get a really good looking guy with a head of hair, and the women are happy, the Greeks are happy, and life moves on.
Awesome.
But Russia's probably a good mix of Alexander. I'm pretty sure Alexander III ended up in Scotland, up in the Highlands. There's mm-hmm. a lot of statues up there of him. It could be a deception, but mm-hmm. more than likely that's where he hid out, and they tried to start a home for Greece again. But the Russians, they kind of mixed with the Vikings too.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of like a hodgepodge of everybody.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that I always found fascinating, I was talking to Scott about this, was that they found a temple or a burial site, and it might be both of the same, but basically a sacred site in Ireland or Scotland, and I think it was Scotland, that was completely Egyptian.
Yeah.
It was Isis. I think it was like a tribute to Isis, or I can't remember, or Skada. I think it was Skada actually was. So Scotland makes sense. It was like she left Egypt and went to Scotland, and there was like this thing there, and like that always blew my mind. I was like, wow, like how does that happen, right? I mean, but look, if you're looking at your map here, it's just easy, right? You just follow the damn coast all the way up.
They have found buried chariots in Ireland.
Have they?
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Egypt
mm-hmm.
moved up there,
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the whole world is a very small place, and people make it seem like it's very large.
Right.
But everyone's connected somehow. If you want to know history, or you just want to know your own history of your own family, you just have to follow the signs.
Yeah. Excuse me.
I would say every single person on this planet is a mixture of the Greeks, who were bald, and the Egyptians, who were braided from every known society of the time. Greeks took control because they were the first people that emerged to have thought, and they basically collected every known person. They even collected Neanderthal, and they moved everybody to Egypt, and they made everyone braid together into one race. And that's basically how society. You're either Egyptian, Greek, or a mixture of the two.
Wow.
And I doubt if there's any pureblood people left anymore. Everyone's a mixture. The only difference between people is your mitochondrial DNA. if a Egyptian male mixed with a Greek female, or the Greek male mixed with an Egyptian female, you're going to have two different societies regardless, because the mitochondrial DNA can actually recoup the old DNA, but you can't if you're from a different line. So like the Greek line, if say they're 40,000 years ahead of everybody.
Okay.
If you mix with an Egyptian female, your line's going to be cut severely. I mean, we're talking about the brain used to be a 3-inch tube in your head. And it's grown so long now, after 40,000 years, the Greeks were there for 40,000 years. That tube is now intertwined in your head and it's melding together. And it's now a block. But it used to be a 3-inch tube. So that's how old people are.
Whoa. I never heard that before. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then basically your synaptic connections determine how intelligent you become. That's basically the tubes connecting along the sides as opposed to the ends. And that's your alien, that's the scoop for you. That's your alien brain there. So,
I had no idea about that.
How many people want to have a big balloon on their head?
Not many.
No. So the aliens are mixing with Indians to try to trick their heads. I think I sent you a little blurb about how they found the Frankenstein people in Wisconsin at the top of the Tree of Life.
No, give me that one again.
Well, you basically got your sorcerers who are so intelligent, their brain, their bloodline went on and on and on. Mm-hmm. They practiced discipline, so they weren't heavy, so they were actually shorter. Their heads were oversized for their bodies. They appeared as aliens, mm-hmm. and then they mixed with the Indians to try to become, more along the line of the Vikings. But if you're still studying, you're still working your brain, your head's still going to be big. And then you end up with people with very large foreheads. And those are the people where the Frankenstein monster was created. That was basically a mythology. But they found a whole bunch of those people in Wisconsin. They were like giants with giant foreheads.
Whoa. So the giants are just giant, huge. We're not talking elongated skulls, just huge foreheads in a regular shape. Wow.
Yeah. And my daughter, myself, I think I told you this once, they dug up some babies in Peru, and all of them had heads that were like twice the size of their bodies. They had little teeny bodies, mm-hmm. a giant brain head. My daughter came out the same way. And I was shocked. She looked just like the alien xenophobe from the movie. And I'm like, oh my God, is this real? And then her eyes clapped at me and I said, okay, she's going to brandish teeth here and eat us all alive, So everything is drawn from something natural. Yeah. And then it's embellished to make it interesting or to preserve the knowledge of what it is. And people just have to have fun with it. Totally.
The Peruvian skulls still blow my mind, though. The actual elongated skulls, those are kind of interesting. How that came out, and then they, which is another one of the binding. It's like, that's not happening because the cuts within, I can't remember the names of them, but the actual parts of your brain that are not your. I'm talking about your skull. Actually, there's a crease that's in there, and the Peruvian skulls don't have the same crease lines and things like that because your skull fuses together after you're born because it has to be flexible when you come out of the womb. Yep. And those don't have them. And I always think of like, well, what the hell are those people? Like, what did is that just like a genetic mutation or what's going on there? But
there was a burial ground with so many people that like that. Mm-hmm. All we can do is assume that a genetic line that had lasted 4,000 or 5,000 years or more tried to reduce themselves in size and basically created a situation that wasn't biologically feasible. So there was a big cemetery out there that just had dozens, if not hundreds, of people who died prematurely, and more than likely that was the situation.
They bred their genes bad and they just bit it.
Yep, it happens to a lot of us.
Right. But it's interesting to see when you look back though, about how big everybody was.
Yeah.
Like, and look at the 1800s just in America, and it's like the average height of a man was like 5'4" or something like that, like 5'5", and it's like, how did it go from everybody being like 6 foot, 7 foot tall to everybody got down to 5 foot at some point, and it's like, or I think we're making the swing back, if I'm not mistaken. I think everybody's kind of getting a little bit taller. But then you look at populations like China, for instance, it's like everybody, or everybody's 5 foot. Like, it just blows my mind.
Oh, you haven't seen the Korean army lately?
No.
Oh, they're tall dudes.
North or south?
North. Yeah.
Really?
They're good looking guys. They're pretty tall and fit, and they're ready for action.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's going on all over the globe. I mean, people just have to, take it for what it is. America's kind of kept in the dark, I think, compared to most of the countries around the world.
As far as our history goes, and
as far as everything goes, I think we're pretty much a labor force. On some level, I think most people just would like most of the lines here in America just to die out.
So we're like Egypt was in back in the day. We're just basically
it's on the back of our $1 bill.
It's true. We're just building the pyramid, huh?
Yeah. We just don't build pyramids anymore. We just kind of hang out, at the retail shop.
Drink beers and watch football.
There's society for you. I've had a number of employers who came up to me and they said, "Do you know?" And I say no, and then they just kind of laugh and walk away, and then they get together with their little group of inner circle, and they just think you're oblivious to what's going on.
Yeah,
and that's it. I just love your show with the UFO moniker, and you branch out and you bring a lot of knowledge back into it. Because the UFO mythology is basically people talking about things that you can't talk about in social circles,
right?
But in a different form, so that people can talk openly about it.
Yeah, and that paradigm is blowing open now with at least the government anyway, and everything that's been happening as far as the release of the videos and the Gillibrand Amendment and all those other things. So I think it's getting to be a thing, and maybe it is a catalyst to kick open the conversations about our history of a human race and all these other things that we don't talk about, psychic abilities, all kinds of stuff that we barely have scratched the surface on,
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you coming on, man. And I thank you for your time, and I can't wait to get into your books and all your research, and it'll be rad. It's going to be pretty cool.
Thank you for taking an interest in my work. It's not every day you get invited to be on the show, so I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, we definitely have you back too, man. It's going to be rad. I'll post the links in all your books and everything, and we'll get people in this map, and I love it. And I saw you got it in the background too, right? That's rad.
I have plenty of books, plenty of maps. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, I've been shipping them out all over the country.
Perfect. I can't wait, man. We'll put one over here. we'll get Bob Lazar's face out of there for a while, and we'll put a map up there.
Send me an address. I'll get you one out right away for free.
Thanks so much, man. And thank you again. It's been super fun.
No, it's been fun talking to you. You got me back into writing and I got 2 books on the table ready to go.
Awesome.
So, just talking to you, it just kind of ignites your brain again to get going again.
That's sometimes all we need is the spark, right?
Yeah. I really hope that, you got to contact your friend Scott Walter out there and get him on that Kensington rune song, because I think that could open the whole wide world of history.
I think so too. I really do. I think he's close, and I think soon we'll see the fruits of his labor, and I think it's going to be pretty rad.
It's going to be fun.